Everyone, this is Nikachu, and we are here for the November Patreon Ask Me Anything. That's right, for everyone at the Master of Waves level and up, you can ask me anything. You get to have your special time here on this video. And the last month was really informative, great questions, and I think it's going to be the same way this month. So let's start it off with Edward. Edward's asking me, I am making a he's making a November AMA question. Getting good online is different than paper magic. What tips have you got to transition to online? For instance, time saving and stops at key steps would be helpful. Well, this probably deserves an entirely different video, but I will give you the rough gist of it. So let's first, maybe I should say where I get my cards from. The majority of the cards, if you have nothing, I go to magicthegatheringonlinetraders.com. They don't sponsor me, they should. They sponsor other people. Look at this. Okay, so what I really like about them is that you can, because online, I mean, you could try to do it through all the bots, but you gotta like buy ticks and then get the cards through them. If you just have your credit card, or I forget what payments they take, but I think they take PayPal as well, you can order like all the cards at once and they'll ship them to you in the digital world. So this is where I get my cards from. Now let's go to just going online, these things that you are going to want to think about while you're online. So let's start with the play lobby. The very first place you're going to want to play is in the constructed open play, because with you're going to have to get used to using these stops, the hotkeys, which we're going to talk about in a second, but this is the primary place you want to start. In the tournament practice area, it's free. You can play for eternity. It is the Super Pony section, but do you know what? You're going to want to learn how the client works. It used to be a lot more buggy, but it has a learning curve. You have to learn how to play Magic online before you can play Magic properly online. How to use those stops. You're going to accidentally click through your turn. It's really frustrating. Get rid of all those mistakes here in the tournament practice area. Totally free. You don't lose anything. Nothing's on the line, and you do get what you pay for. I mean, everyone is here just dinking around, and you can get people quitting on you prematurely. But you know what? It's better than Cockatrice because people still had to buy the cards for their deck, so I think it's great. So before we talk about how you get further, let's talk about like what kind of customizations have I made. Let's go to my, what is it? Input settings? Yeah, so input settings, the three biggest ones are pass priority, at least this is for me, pass until you can respond, and then there's of course pass until end of turn. This is the notorious F6. So I've got like this squiggly line. Okay, so I don't know if I can properly show this to you guys, but this is my pass priority. That means like if someone used a lightning bolt on me, I just say okay, and then I will get priority again after the next time they do something happens. But then there is the pass until you can respond, which means you keep passing until they do something. It simulates a little bit more like real Magic, whereas when you just say okay, you're gonna get priority again when they try to move through the next step, and so on. And that's where your stops come in. So, and I have them really close together so that when I'm actually playing my hand, like I don't have to look to see where the keys are. I have all my hotkeys, my most important hotkeys, they're right next to each other. I sometimes misclick the other thing. You've seen this many times on camera. I've done it a billion times by accident. It happens here and there, but overall it saves a ton of time, and it's just significantly more convenient. If you have to use the hotkeys. If you don't use the hotkeys, you're going to lose on time all over the place. Using the hotkeys are worth it. So I use the pass priority. I have this as my squiggly line. I use pass until you can respond, which means you're passing until they do something, and pass until end of turn. That means you're basically, you pass and you ignore all their actions, all their spells. That's the notorious F6. It doesn't completely pass through the turn. If they attack, you're going to have an opportunity to block, but that's it. That's all you have. And you can change them by playing Unbind and then putting something else there. I'm just going to go back to 2. Bind to 2. Excellent. I don't use these other ones. I should. Always Yes sounds like something. Always Yield. I do have a... What is it? Remove all auto yields. Oh, I don't have anything bound to that. Just something important to note, like I used to use function keys, but I now have the latest version of MacBook Pro, which has a touch bar instead of function keys, so I can't use it. Whatever you use for numbers or any keys will only work when you're playing the game. If you touch the chat box, it disables it, so I can use all my numbers and it won't pass priority in the chat box. It's completely isolated from the game. So let's talk about the stops in dual settings. So these are my stops. I mean, multiplayer games, one. Okay, so these are my stops for one-on-one games. I don't know why they are those. That just somehow those are the ones that work for me. I don't need a stop at my end of combat step or the damage step, but I do want a stop at my opponent's beginning of combat step. That's just how it is. You want to copy it? Sure. If you want to put stops all over the place, you're free to do that as well. But the stops save you some time because you don't want to keep passing priority when at the damage step and the end step. That's totally useless. But just keep in mind that you sometimes have to, in the game, like hit the draw step so that you have some effects on the draw or their draw step or their main phase, whatever you need to do. What else do I want to say? I sell cards, and if anyone wants to know where I sell my cards, sell my treasure chests, I sell them to goat bots, and if I want to buy cards, I go to Magic the Gathering Online Traders bot. I use those to buy cards. I like Magic the Gathering Online Traders bot 0. So let's talk about the play lobby for a little while. So there's a point where you're gonna say, okay, I'm winning. Record all your matches, by the way, how often you're winning and losing. And once you say, I don't know, maybe around 60% you're winning, you can finally say, okay, I'm confident to play for ticks or play points and whatnot. So the first place you're gonna want to play is in the queues. They're the cheapest. It just costs how much? It costs either 2 event tickets or 20 play points. You can buy tickets and play points. You might be getting them if you get into online. I can't remember what Wizards gives you in the starter pack or whatever, because it's been a long time since I started playing on here, and there wasn't play points at the time of when I started playing on Magic the Gathering Online. But you can buy event tickets on the client. It's in their store, and this is the cheapest place where you can play. And I would say keep playing these because the friendly leagues cost 80 play points. Keep playing these until you reach about 400 play points. Make sure you have 400 play points. That might be too conservative, but I think it's pretty good. Because once you hit 400 play points, I would say take your shot at the friendly leagues. The friendly leagues here, friendly league costs 80. How much does it cost? I want to see the price. It's 80 play points. It's 80 play points. I don't need to think about it. Yeah, 80 play points or 8 event tickets. And the point is, if you were to bomb in this 3 times, if you bomb 3 times and lose about 240 play tickets, move back down to the queues to rebuild yourself up to 400. It's really low variance, but if somehow these players were too tough for you, don't worry about it. You still got play points. Move back down where you were winning before and grind yourself back up to, you know, about 400 play points, and then take a shot at the friendly leagues again. Again, this might be a very conservative strategy, but I think this would really work, and there's no rush. I don't think there's any rush to move to the highest levels of Magic. Just work your way up slowly. So once you play in these friendly leagues, I would say, I don't know, at like maybe 1,000 play points / ticks, you know, whatever, you can take a shot at the, what's it called? The competitive leagues. They cost 12 tickets. 12 tickets or 120 play points. Take shots. Yeah, at 1,000 play points, take a shot here. If you lose 3 times and go down to about 640-ish play points, move back down to the friendly leagues again and regrind your way back up to 1,000, and that's when you take your shot here. And then once you start winning consistently at the competitive leagues, just keep going at it. You don't need to move all the way to the top. I think you should prove that you deserve to be there, and there's no shame moving back down to where you were beating people and then moving back up. And I hear a lot of people say online, oh, the competitive leagues are like the same as the friendly leagues. Well, I don't think so, because I go 5-0 way more often in the friendly leagues than I do in the competitive leagues. So that's sort of a bankroll strategy I would recommend to people who want a strategy in order to move up in the online meta. And then once there's some point where you should be feeling so confident that you know, you have so many play points or whatever, you can play in the challenges or whatever. Or if you want, so there's a point where you can like burn like 250 play points on the Modern Challenge. And other things. Just make sure, you know, I guess what it comes down to is once you have enough, you can spend about 15%-ish, 20 or 15% taking a shot. And I would say try not to look at the ticks and the play points like money. Don't worry about when you lose. Just keep pushing yourself, keep asserting yourself. If you have enough, move up, challenge yourself. This is the only way you're going to get better, but don't move up so fast, so high that you're just going to get like crushed needlessly. You know, prove that you belong there by grinding a little bit below. So I think that's everything I can say about online. You know, just off the top of my head. So let's get back to the questions. So let's start with Doug. Okay, Nikachu, with you backing Tropical Fish over Mono Blue, what are the matchups you feel will be an issue for the new build, and how can we combat them? Okay, so let's look at them. Let's look at all the things that are probably gonna be a problem. MGG top 8. This is probably not gonna be all the archetypes, but I like how they got them all nicely listed to the left in a convenient fashion. Okay, so Eldrazi aggro, I think we improve in that matchup. We don't need Master of Waves. Curse Catcher is not a big deal. We have more Silvergill Adept effects, which help grind us more cards. We have access to green cards if we need them, which are applicable in the Eldrazi aggro matchup because of Ratchet Bomb. Like when we talk about Eldrazi aggro, we're talking about Eldrazi Tron specifically. And Commander Speaker is a great clock. It's worth a lot. So even when our opponent Ratchet Bombs the 2-drops away, Commander Speaker is still around, and that's worth quite a bit of damage. I think against Affinity, we improve a lot. We had no reason to have Master Waves in this matchup at all. Commander Speaker is, again, a much better clock, and even Merfolk Branchwalker is potentially a 3/2 creature and gets even bigger. It puts a lot more pressure on Ravager, because Ravager will now have to sack a lot more permanents onto itself if it wants to trade or trade up against a Merfolk Branchwalker with a Merfolk Branchwalker and a Lord in play. That's a 4-powered creature, so the Ravager has to get to a 5/5 in order to survive, or just a 4/4 to trade and then move to something else. But then they are in a situation where they can get hit with Dismember or Ratchet Bomb. But I think the Green Splash, despite the fact we're going to take a bit of damage, which is not ideal against Affinity, I think it still makes up for it. Against Death Shadow, it's close. I mean, I don't have enough experience against Death Shadow to know for sure what's better or not. It's very convenient. It's very nice to have this Commander Speaker. On the other hand, losing Curse Catcher also may not be the greatest. Death Shadow can sometimes be constricted on lands. They have some clunky, like, Kulgan's Command is a big deal, so cutting that off is important. And we have less Curse Catchers to do it. And for sure, Master of Waves is actually pretty good in this matchup, but it's possible that all-in Lord strategy will be very good against them because of the... it gets out of range of Kulgan's Command, gets out of range of Liliana the Last Hope, and is it static caster, and like the Marigeri can tap Tasigur and what's it called? Death Shadow down, and if we copy with Phantasmal Image, we'll have multiples of them. So sometime we'll have to tell. I mean, also, of course, taking out Aether Vial makes it harder and more clunky for our green creatures to get cast, because we don't have, like, it's not like our whole deck is all green. But on the other hand, Death Shadow's on its way down. I mean, they're already at 6% and they're still dropping. It is just not the deck that it used to be. Against Abzan, I think we improve, because Master of Waves is a very good card, but they have a lot of answers to it in the form of 4 Fatal Push and 4 Path to Exile, and Merfolk Branchwalker is probably all we really need in that sort of matchup. Not sure, but I'm pretty sure Mono Green is either equal or still better. Against Hate Bears, I think we are a little bit worse. Just a little bit worse. I think this is a matchup where Master of Waves is very, very good. There's a lot of situations where we get these board stalls and we can't win unless we have a Spreading Seas, which is going to stick, which may not always happen because they have Ghost Quarter out. But, so we need... yeah, we either need this Spreading Seas, or we could use Master of Waves because the board gets clogged. There's a bunch of Blue Devotion on the board. Master of Waves hits the board. If they don't have Path to Exile, they're doomed. That Master of Waves will win the game. So maybe we get a little weaker in this matchup. It's hard to tell because we are faster, so I need like a lot more games to find out, you know, does the speed help us enough? Because usually we just never couldn't get out of the gates fast enough. We could never put enough pressure on them for it to matter, and they would just quickly stabilize, and then we're like just passing the turn a bunch of times. We're waiting for Spreading Seas or Master of Waves, and yeah, so I don't know exactly where we stand, but it's possible we get a little weaker here. Okay, red deck wins, we definitely get weaker. You can shore that up with a bunch of counter spells, I'm assuming. Make sure you got your Dispels, maybe Spell Pierce, not Swan Song. And Negate would be good. Negate will work. So just creatures backed up by just a bit of counter magic should be enough. I think we're much better in the mirror. We lose a little bit of damage, but we have more lands that are not islands, and on top of that we have just a much faster curve. But you want to know what we're worse against. Hexproof? I don't think so at all. I don't think we're worse against Blue-White Control. We might be a little bit worse against Blue-White Red, because Master Waves is usually pretty good there. Blue Moon decks. Okay, we're going to be worse against all the Blood Moon decks. My initial theory is that we should side out green creatures against these decks, so that if Blood Moon hits, it's not that big of a deal. We side it out like our Kumena Speakers and maybe some Branchwalkers. Against Blue Moon specifically, we can bring in a bunch of counter magic and side out the green creatures. That's not going to be the same. That's not going to work against all the Blood Moon decks. I mean, there's, for example, the Ponza deck. That deck is a Blood Moon deck, and we don't always have the right counter spells to bring in, so we can't take out all the green creatures. A lot of people are suggesting a forest. I don't know if that's enough, if that's going to work. Most of the time I think that's just going to be a source of brown mana. It's just going to act like Mutavault mana. So yeah, I don't know for sure. For sure, we get worse against Blood Moon, definitely. And I'm theoretically, I think it would be correct to take out green creatures and side in as much useful stuff as possible. Mono red control, Grixis control. Grixis control might get a little worse because we don't have Master Waves, and Master Waves is very good in that matchup, but we have Branchwalker is just good. Branchwalker is good, and counterspells are good, so we can shape that up with counterspells. Storm? I think we get a little worse against Storm. We don't have as many Curse Catchers, and I actually am a firm believer of Master Waves in this matchup. I like Master Waves against Storm. I know it looks like, I mean, like, what are you talking about, Nikachu? It's like 4 mana against a deck that can win on turn 3, but if you're playing it properly, it's going to be slow, it's going to go into the long game, so don't worry about that. It's just that if they play Empty the Warrens and have a big board presence, you have the option of playing Master of Waves with some devotion and try to equalize the board. And it's not like they can Lightning Bolt your Master of Waves, they can just Lightning Bolt one elemental, so that's one way of stabilizing against them, but it's proactive. It's not like Echoing Truth. I mean, if they don't have Empty the Warrens, we can tick a Vial up from 2 to 3 to 4, put this Master Waves in play, and then threaten to win on that turn. Against I think against almost all the Creature Toolbox decks we should be favored, but we're also looking at, like, what are we worse against? Ad nauseam, we are not worse against. Dredge we're worse against. We lost Curse Catchers. I mean, if you want to play Tropical Merfolk with 4 Curse Catchers, it's probably playable. It hasn't been proven yet, but it's probably playable. But Master Waves and Kira Great Glassspinner, that combination, very good against Dredge. Great stabilizer. Annihilate's Conflagrate. Conflagrate is really awkward against Master of Waves because you have to discard a card for each elemental. Usually we have a decent chunk of devotion, but it's really good at stabilizing the board, and if Dredge wants to make an all-out attack, you just make some simple blocks and then we swing back for either the win or something very close to the win. How to shore it up? More sideboard interaction, 4 Relic of Progenituses. I can't remember if Spell Pierce was useful. Spell Pierce is fine, like it's a fine card. Kopala is probably good. Kopala's a good stabilizer there. What else is good against Dredge? Swan Song, probably. Just more graveyard hate. Like, 4 relics are very, very important, and probably Spell Pierce is fine. I played with Spell Pierce. I like sided out because it's better to have like a Curse Catcher on board. But if I'm not playing with Curse Catchers, I'm playing with Spell Pierces. That would work. So I think we get a little worse against Dredge, but we can shore it up. It's fine. Living End, I have no idea. Probably we don't get much worse. Bloodless Titan, don't think it matters. Instant Reanimator. So yeah, I think overall Blood Moon decks, not very good. Basically anywhere that Master of Waves was good, we probably lost some percentage points, like against Dredge, and maybe against some Hate Bear variations. We just gotta move on with more creatures, beefier creatures. How to shore up the Hate Bear matchup? Maybe with some good removal. Dismember, Gutshot. I like Gutshot in the Hate Bear matchup. Kills Flicker Wisp, Thalia, some other stuff. So moving on. Jeremy asks, Ponza is getting very popular at my local game store, and on average, I would say they're doing pretty decent. Do you think they will ever become part of the meta? What line of play would you advise against them? So Ponza is just a deck that sort of comes in and out of popularity. It's like a fringely popular deck out of nowhere. Oh, a bunch of people are playing Ponza, and then all of a sudden they go away. It seems like sort of a deck that needs to wait to be positioned, and then all of a sudden it is, and then it gets good. I would not be surprised if the rise in Tropical Merfolk has brought some playability to Ponza. I don't think people realize actually how big the Merfolk community is. We are enormous. A long time ago, Burn used to be like the go-to budget deck to get into Modern, and there was tons of Burn players, and I think at this point, like, most of the archetypes are pretty diversified, but I think one of the most common archetypes is actually just Merfolk in the grand scheme of things, like in Day 1 GPs and stuff like that. So Merfolk's all over the place. We're going Tropical, we're now a 2-color deck, we're vulnerable to Blood Moon. That's something that Ponza can take advantage of. always when Merfolk is huge in numbers, there's some our biggest enemies rise up. So either go mono blue against them, because like mono, I don't know exactly what the matchup's like. Maybe it's 50-50 for all I know. Like if they get Blood Moon, I can see a lot of games that are still playable. If they don't have Blood Moon, then I think we're favored by quite a bit. Like we've got good interaction if we want it. Like counter spells work. I can't remember if they are a Utopia Sprawl deck, so you can Spreading Seas the land that has a Utopia Sprawl on it, and they lose the Utopia Sprawl. But with Mono Blue, I had like almost undefeated record against Ponza, and I imagine I should still have good games going tropical, but probably they will have some free wins. Like they just go turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Blood Moon, and then laugh at me, and then yeah, I don't got anything. I got this Botanical Sanctum and a Mutavault, and I can't play Magic anymore. So something if it's so big in your meta, go mono blue. If it's not so big in your meta, it's probably just going to be a poor matchup, but not unwinnable. You have an Ether Vial; it's still useful. So some other good. I mean, if you want good cards against them, Gutshot is fine, because you can kill their mana dorks, and they really rely on their like 4, 5, 6 mana spells pretty heavily. Like sometimes you just kill one of their mana dorks, and they're so far behind from their 4 mana land destruction card and not Primeval Titan, Inferno Titan, and all this other stupid nonsense that they play. Another good card against them would be Tidebinder Mage. I think Negate is fine against them because they have Anger. I think they play with Anger the Gods, which is weird because they're a mana dork deck, but you know, killing our stuff is more important as well. So those are some ideas that you could throw around, and I like the idea of Gutshot right now because Affinity is pretty big. If we look here, like Affinity is pretty big. The Humans deck is pretty big. The Death and Taxes decks are pretty big. You might be able to bring some in against Merfolk right now. Yeah, Humans, look at that. Didn't exist before. So those are some things you could do. Alright, so Stefan says, "Hi Nikachu." Hi Stefan. I've been playing Tropical Fish since the release of Ixalan and have been doing great. I have not gotten around to playing on Magic the Gathering Online because I'm missing the fetches, but played at my local game store and other tournaments to great results. My current nemesis when it comes to matchups is Eldrazi Taxes. Very powerful, very disruptive, and also very tricky to play against. In my latest tournaments, I have not played Disdainful Stroke, which I totally should and will from now on, but instead played Heroic Intervention, 2 of them, and an extra Dispel and Relic. First, what are your thoughts on Heroic Intervention? I know you haven't played the card, but I'd still love to hear your thoughts. And secondly, would you side it in against Eldrazi Taxes? I mean, Eldrazi Taxes, I don't know what it will do, to be honest, because if they Path to Exile your creature... Wait, hold on, let me make sure I know what I'm... Heroic Intervention, as far as I know, it makes your creatures indestructible. But does it give it hexproof as well? Permanents you control gain hexproof and okay. Interesting. No. I wouldn't, because it's 2 mana, so it's very hard. They're gonna be putting pressure on you by quite a bit. I mean, they're gonna play Tide Hollow Scholar, they'll be playing Thought-Knot Seer. They're gonna see your hand. It's just really hard to hold up this card. It's like impossible. It's 2 mana. I think it's too clunky. There might be some situations where, you know, we both have a big board, so you make a big attack and maybe they'll make some bad blocks and they'll lose some creatures. But aside from that, like, I just don't see how this card is being played. Let's say they play Tide Hollow Scholar, then you tap out for Lord of Atlantis, and then they make for their 3-drop, they play Wasteland Strangler and eat something up. And I don't know how you get value. This is actually card disadvantage. It only trades with Path to Exile. but otherwise, let's say they play Wasteland Strangler and target your creature. You play this, what's called Heroic Intervention. They still have got their 3/2 creature, but you just lost a card. So it looks like card disadvantage. Probably I would not bring this card in against them. It just seems weird. I don't have a lot of experience with the card because I'm not particularly impressed by either side of it. Like, against blue-white control that plays Supreme Verdict, I'm just going to outplay them, because that's all I need to do. I don't need, I mean, you could try to, you know, put a bunch of creatures on the board and then play Heroic Intervention, but in response to Supreme Verdict, but I'm just going to outplay them even though I don't need it. And my biggest problem with Heroic Intervention is that it's 2 mana. It's hard to hold up. It's hard to play creatures and hold this thing up. And then if you don't want to hold it up, you have to tap out. But then you're just vulnerable to everything that you brought it in for. You know, you basically have to wait until you either have a Ether Vial out or you need like 4 mana for it to become useful. So I heard some people really like it though. You know, honestly, I haven't heard anything bad about it. Like, people are playing it and they're like, I love it. So maybe there's something to it that I don't know. But I might be moving away from the green sideboard cards to make the mana base a little bit more streamlined, bring in more Cavern of Souls. Like, so like, to play this card, you can't play with too many Cavern of Souls, whereas if we don't play this card, maybe we can play more Cavern of Souls instead, because we don't need the green mana nearly as much. And what else? And secondly, would you side it in against Eldrazi Taxes? Yeah, so probably not, but Heroic Invention could be brought in against a bunch of other decks. It is still like a 2 mana negate against a lot of decks. Like spells that target your creatures. I could sort of see it being brought in against Death Shadow, because the matches play out long, but I'm not sure. I don't have a lot of experience with the card. But Eldrazi Taxes, it's rough. It's a rough matchup. You know, a lot of people are asking about Eldrazi Taxes, and I would say that you just have to hope they don't have a nut draw. Don't be too desperate. Try to build up a big board and outplay them from there. Sometimes they just have it all. You know, if they got a million Wasteland Stranglers and they exile a bunch of stuff and more Wasteland Stranglers, what can you do? What can you do? So thanks a lot for the question, Stefan. And then lastly, Juan Morelos. So, hi Nikachu, I just completed my own Tropical Merfolk deck. Awesome for Tropical Merfolk, and I'm having a blast with it. And against my friend who uses Eldrazi, my only problem is despite boarding in Disdainful Strokes, Ceremonious Rejections, and Natural States, my friend would consistently Pithing Needle, naming my Mutavault, and rendering it useless. What's the best way to circumvent that? When's the best time to play Mutavault given this situation? First off, it will prevent Mutavault from ever becoming a creature, but it will not prevent Mutavault from adding mana, so Mutavault will not be completely useless. Remember, the card Pithing Needle states that it cannot prevent mana abilities. So, you know, Mutavault still taps for mana, because this is sort of sounds like what's happening here. You said, like, you know, my Mutavault's not doing anything. So there's no good time to play the Mutavault. I mean, you could delay it for a very long time if you know you're not going to be attacking with it. So just keep playing islands, play creatures. And I don't mind this sort of strategy against something like Eldrazi, where they might have a Pithing Needle and they know that they need to tap out for the next few turns, playing Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher and stuff like that. So I see a lot of premature Pithing Needles on Ether Vial, and if you don't play your Mutavault too early, then maybe they'll play their Pithing Needle on Ether Vial, and your Mutavault will still be in good shape. But I just let you know, I hope that you weren't looking at, like, I hope you knew you could still add mana with that. That's very important. Now, there's another thing, though. Because Pithing Needle is a really big and powerful part of their sideboard plan, I like to hedge against Pithing Needle. If I don't have tectonic edges in my sideboard, I don't take out any Mutavaults out of my deck because I need all the lands. But if I have a bunch of tectonic edges in my sideboard, I do take out one Mutavault so I can hedge against Pithing Needle. So that now I have multiple Pithing Needle targets and I can never draw too many things of one particular Pithing Needle target. So so we're gonna thank all these guys. Great questions. Thanks to Juan, Stefan, Jeremy, Doug, and Edward. Thank you so much for your questions. I hope I get more questions next month. I hope this helped a lot of people. This has been Nikachu with his Patreon Ask Me Anything for November 2017.